April 1st, 2023. Well, Trump has finally been indicted, as I'd mentioned in a previous video was upcoming. Of course, it looked for a while like maybe it wouldn't happen, but I think that was just to trick us in some ways. But anyhow, I think we've heard a lot about this, and um, I think in a sense, certainly indicting him on this particular set of charges is completely outrageous and stupid, as everybody else has said. So, and it also sets an interesting precedent here, which is not good. It falls in the line of this double two-tiered standard of justice that we've been talking about for a long time. I mean, consider the much more serious felonies that, for instance, Hillary Clinton committed, and yet they conclude that no reasonable prosecutor would indict her. Of course, they didn't indict Trump on this either. The feds had a chance at this and decided it was a no-go because there really is no crime here, in my opinion. Um, in fact, I went through in the video where we discussed this before, why I don't believe there's a crime, because, and of course, we'll find out once we get the actual indictment to see if they come up with something else that we haven't thought of. But in terms of paying money to Stormy Daniels and this other lady whose name escapes me, the Playboy Bunny, you have a situation where we're really dealing with the negotiation of a non-disclosure agreement. So the idea that this was the essential offense was the fact that he um, uh, falsely reported what the expense was, I think is really up in the air. It probably may end up in some kind of minutia in the New York tax law also. So that's that'll have to be played out as time goes forward. Um, and of course, the original misdemeanor charges that would be involved seem to me to be uh, um, basically a kind of a misdemeanor, which would statute of limitations already expired. So that's one of the things that we'll have to look at here, and we'll get a better idea, I guess, next week, the next video perhaps. I don't know if I'll do it on that or not, but it is once we learn a little bit more about the charges and get some analysis of it. Of course, I think that the Democrats may well achieve their purpose by simply entangling Trump in a variety of legal affairs in court, which may never ultimately lead to any actual punishment, but could just simply tie him down in various ways, making it very difficult to campaign effectively. And we'll see how that part goes either. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And also, you can, of course, send links to this to your friends so other people get to see it. So anyhow, yeah, that's the way I see it. That certainly, if you simply book this as a legal expense, to me, it really was a legal expense. What else was it? I mean, and the other issues we get into and the statute of limitations. The theory is that somehow this was a campaign finance violation. But again, what's often not being mentioned, I don't understand, some of the things that people and these commentators don't mention is the fact that a person has no limit on the amount of money they can put into their own personal campaign. Witness Ross Perot many years ago, who paid for his own campaign completely, or Trump in the 16 and 2022 elections, I think, put money into his campaign out of his own pocket at times. Sometimes he was being criticized a little bit by people by not putting enough in. I remember that, because he was trying to raise money too. But at any rate, but the point is that's so I don't think, even if it was considered to be a campaign expense, of course, then it wasn't reported as such, but that is a federal offense, not as I don't think that's a correct state offense. Again, we'll have to see how that plays out and what goes on. One thing about statute of limitations, there's a theory that if it can be upgraded to a felony because of the underlying federal issue, which seems dubious, but the payments themselves were actually made by his attorney, Michael Cohen. and essentially, uh, as I understand it, the actual payments to Cohen were $420,000 distributed in equal payments of $13,000 each throughout the year 2018. And as such, those payments occurred well within the 6-year limit, I guess, from when they were made. If in fact it's the payments that would be to Cohen would be the offense, rather than the payments to Daniels and the other lady would being an offense, as you can see, because those decisions were all made and paid in 17, and they're outside the 6-year limit, even for the state federal felony, offense. It's, and the question of whether or not the state has any interest at all in pursuing federal issues as to why they didn't report certain things will become a bit of a controversial issue, I guess, as time goes on. And so, at any rate, that's kind of my general thought on the subject, and kind of what the facts that we've come up with so far. We'll have to wait and see what happens. A lot of discussion's been made on, the impact of this on the race. I know as right now Trump is apparently on Fox News running some really nasty negative ads against DeSantis. I think that's really unfortunate he's doing that, because for one thing, DeSantis hasn't even announced yet. And second of all, I think right now doing divisive things within the party is not a good thing while he's still facing these issues. And the other thing to consider is he's already lashed out and attacked the judge. Is this a smart move? I mean, the judge, if he's already prejudiced against him, is only going to be more likely to come up with decisions that will be hostile to his own, defense. And there are some questions about whether or not, if he keeps making these public comments, whether there'll be some kind of gag order placed on him, which might prevent him even from campaigning. So that will be another issue that's in play here. I just heard tonight on Tucker Carlson that was a possibility. I somehow he doesn't seem to understand or properly behave when he considers the fact that they're out to get him, and you have to be very careful not to give them ammunition, because they will use it against you. Anything you say can and will be used against you, as the Miranda rights say. Well, it's definitely true here, and they're doing it. And of course, that's we can all argue this is unfair, which it is. I mean, after all, look at the things that Democrats are being let slide on. I mean, you have the Hunter Biden thing, the fact that probably the Bidens themselves are probably 8 foreign agents that have not properly registered. Yet look what they did with General Flynn on the subject. I mean, as an example, etc. The Hillary Clinton thing I mentioned before. I mean, she clearly obstructed justice and destroyed information that was under subpoena, and actually allowed classified information to fall into uncleared hands. Because so if you go back to the history of that, and that was clearly established, and yet nothing was done to her at all. We do have a two-tier justice system, and that is one thing we need to push back on very effectively. My hope is at some point that we will have some court decision. I would even hope that the judge is an honest person. We would throw this case out. But again, attacking the judge is probably not going to motivate him to do that. And just by letting the case go forward, they'll be doing damage, because it will get in the way of his campaign, as I've pointed out. The other thing that's looming behind us here, which is not good either, is the fact that we have a situation where there's this Dominion voting machine company's lawsuit against Fox News. And this is in the hands of, obviously, a Democrat judge in Delaware. Great. I guess because they're both Delaware corporations or something. I don't know. At least, so I don't know how that's going to play out. But so far, as I understand, there's been a series of judicial rulings against Fox News motions. And so, Fox News is in the hands of a very hostile judge. And of course, this could maybe even economically, theoretically bankrupt Fox News or News Corp completely. I mean, this is a theoretical possibility, maybe not theoretical. I think that ultimately what will happen is that that any really adverse decision will be appealed, and eventually will get this federal system and probably go to the Supreme Court, I suspect, considering its importance. And so I think at some level, probably they'll never be able to actually do this economic damage they really want to do. They may very well force Fox into paying them some money, but I mean, is Dominion in its entirety worth anything like 1.6 billion? And second of all, I mean, have they really been damaged? I mean, how much business have they really lost due to whatever somebody on Fox said about them? Uh, and so that in itself, I think, becomes a very interesting issue that will come up if, in fact, they try to rule that they're not protected by the immunity that news organizations typically have, the so-called absence of malice concept, where they have to have a malicious intent. And I think that, to me, is also up in the air, but in the hands of a Democrat judge. I mean, who knows how that will play out. But that's another big concern I have that's almost as big as the Trump thing, because, um, ultimately, as I've said before, I personally raised the question, if Trump is cleared of all this nonsense completely and left alone legally, can he actually win a general election in the fall, in November of 2024? He came in short on the popular vote in the last two elections, and the things since then have not been positive, needless to say. And so you have, I think, a majority of the population prejudiced against him ahead of time. And I understand his most strong supporters see him as the end all and be all of what's good or something, but if he can't actually win the election, what is the point? I mean, that seems to me to be the whole thing that occurs to me. And as I said before, I think the way that he could win the election would, well, maybe if Biden is actually the candidate, that might be it, if something particularly went bad. I mean, and a lot of things are probably going to go bad. I mean, look at the Ukraine war. That may not be looking that good by 2024 election day, for example. And another thing, I think that also the possibility that a third party candidate, sort of a no labels type, left of center person I mentioned before, I think that is a possibility. If somebody like that could pull up 5% of the vote, then all of a sudden that might change everything in favor of Trump. But barring that, I don't know. I mean, it even looks to me like states he needs to win, like Georgia, have almost turned against him. I mean, when you look at what happened in the last election, there his candidates all lost, and you have a Secretary of State that seems to be determined to help take him down. I mean, and they tried to take him down, and he got reelected. So that's another negative thing that's out there. And to me, what's most important is getting these Democrats out of office. To get them, they're destroying the country. And even a Republican that you don't like that much would be so much better than any of these Democrats. It's not even debatable. But I do really hope that whatever, that Trump doesn't end up in prison or something. I hate to think that would actually happen, but these people are determined to do it. And unfortunately, almost all the venues he's going to be tried in are Democrat-dominated, very unfair venues. So at any rate, we can hope for the best, but I think that's kind of the way I see it right now. And we'll have to see what the actual charges they're going to bring are, and whether there's something in there that I haven't thought of that would change our perception. At any rate, and one other thing I'd like to mention about it, because they are apparently entangling it with a federal statute, it looks to me like this would then become appealable into federal court if he doesn't win at the state level. But that could be after the election's over before that could be resolved. So that's another thing, again, you have to watch out for. Well, at any rate, by the way, as always, I'll be posting these on Rumble as well as YouTube, and the addresses of my social media accounts, Twitter, Gab, etc., Parler, are in the description below. All for now.